we all know there's good money in fixing and flipping cars for profit. Is there good money in scrapping cars for profit too? Let's check out this one. First task, we need to unload it. And just like that, car's off the trailer. Let's head in the garage and check things out. We have the car in the garage now. Let's chat about it a little bit. Definitely more money if you can fix a car, flip it, and sell it for profit. Some cars just aren't worth fixing up. This is one of them. In my area, a Ford 500, they were never popular to begin with. So the ones that are around here, people drove them for as long as they can, then retired them. Like this one here is a 2005 or 2006. I paid $150 for it. There's assumed transmission issues. It's either transmission issues or a module not communicating with the computer. You could rev it up a little bit. You could put it in gear, hardly moves. It engages right away. But that alone, the car isn't worth repairing. I've looked on Kijiji and CanadaTrader.ca for prices for these cars, and they range between like $1,400 and $2,500 fixed up. So something like this definitely not worth putting a transmission in. So now we'll see, what is it worth in scrap. For me, I generally process cars for scrap for their metals, aluminum wheels, catalytic converters, body weight, quick items I can remove and sell. I don't really keep a whole lot of parts here. I don't have a lot of storage available, and there's just some items simply not worth saving. If it's something you're going to move around a little bit, then eventually throw out anyway. And a car like this, there's no demand locally for parts, so nothing really worth saving on it. I did take a look at eBay. There are some parts that do have value. Whether or not I remove them and put them on our eBay store, it's something I'll decide later. But I guess the purpose of this video is more, what's a quick smash and grab process worth if you buy a car, scrap it just for the metals, and see what the return is. You see the windows are open in the car. Every car I bring in, when I get ready to process it for scrap, I do several items. I put the windows down, I put the car in neutral, leave the key in the ignition. That way, when I'm finished processing it, I know the car will roll. The window's open. When it's picked up by the claw at the scrapyard, it's less window glass for me to sweep off my trailer. And also by having the key in the ignition, I have steering to steer it onto my trailer. I use a winch to pull it back on the trailer, but you still need to be able to steer. Now, one problem with the windows open in this car is, wow, it smells. Besides old tobacco smell, there's another legalized product in Canada that definitely a lot of it was consumed or smoked in this vehicle, and my whole garage reeks of it right now. Now, this car is an all-wheel drive 2005 or 2006 Chrysler. Oh, it's not a Chrysler. It's a Ford 500. It has 4 aluminum wheels. I'll see if I can sell those. It does have 3 catalytic converters. There's going to be the body weight. The car does have an older Pioneer stereo. I may remove that and sell it. There is a car battery. Other than that, not too much else will be removed off the car. But the next video clips you're going to watch as we remove the parts. Let's have a little walk around. It's too bad the car smells really bad, because it does have leather interior in pretty good shape. I never really sell complete interiors, but sometimes people building old street rods, they do like the bucket seats out of cars like this. Someone was fiddling. I see a new throttle body. That's a battery I put in the car to get it running. So all the things I look at is, I see one converter down there. I might actually be able to unbolt it. Let's put some more light on it. eBay. Center caps seem to sell on these, but most of these center caps are beat up on the car. Rims are pretty gouged up from our winters. I will try to sell them, but chances are they'll go for per pound weight as scrap aluminum. There's the Pioneer stereo. The face folds forward, accepts a CD. Definitely old school. And as I'm sitting in the car, again, wow, the smell. I'll be glad when this one's done. So for the scrapyard I deal with, to get the maximum value for the body weight, I do have to drain the fluids and drop the fuel tank. So that's part of what we will be doing in the video. Let's start the process. It's the next day, snowing a little bit, time to process a car. First thing I do, I jack it up so I can get the tank out and the catalytic converters off and the fluids drained. Now that I have it where I want, it's time to do the underneath work. Catalytic converter number 1. I like to use a recip saw with a carbide blade. It's the quickest way to cut the converter off. You can see by the look of this one, it's the downstream converter, and it is an OEM Ford one. So it's an original one. You paid more for that than you would an aftermarket. Let's have a look at it. Only good converter is one that's full. We do look for the ceramic inside, the honeycomb, and we see it's in there, and it's in there. Now this looks like a 3/4 full. Ford is notorious for having different amounts of catalyst in these. So this one is not this full amount, it's down to about here. So chances are that will be classed at the scrapyard as a half full. And we will need to get the code off of it. There's a code right here, which I'll share them later in the video. Let's tackle the next converters. The 3 catalytic converters are removed. I found the part numbers. I will get a quote before I bring them to the metal yard. We're going to pre-prep, removing some of the parts to drop the tank a little later. The tank is... This car has a tank. Since it's all-wheel drive, we've got a drive shaft up here and a V-shaped tank. So I have to drop a piece of the exhaust, drive shaft, but in this case I'm just cutting them off. Then later we'll address the tank itself. Got the rear drive shaft off. it fought me. Normally the bolts just come out. These were stuck. I didn't want to break my Torx bits. I didn't really want to heat things up around the gas tank. So I cut the heads off with the recip and just pulled the shaft off. Sometimes when you're dropping the tanks that have these valleys, you really need to get the flange off here just because the clearance is so tight for dropping the tank. Now on to the next step. Time to drain the oil. Transmission has like an 8mm hex. I see someone's already chiseled it before, so it'll be chiseled to remove again. Well, this had transmission issues, and the oil does show it. It's as black as the motor oil. Like most Fords, I imagine it's supposed to be pink. So now we'll drain the coolant. There's a threaded drain valve under here. Well, we'll let that go for a few minutes as we remove the fuel tank. There's about half a tank of fuel in there to pump out. It's fuel transfer time. I cut holes on either end of the tank because of the valley in the center. I'm using a homemade pump setup I built a little while ago. I'll put a link to the video. Now it's time to empty the fuel. There we go. We're back to the beginning. The car is processed out, tank is dropped, oils are drained out of it, catalytic converters removed. Now we reload it back onto the trailer, take it to the metal yard, weigh it in, and sell it off. They'll buy the converters, they'll buy the body, and the next trip they'll buy the aluminum wheels. Stay tuned. I'll show you the weigh-in and the final results. But first, we have to load it on the trailer. It's a snowy day. I'm not doing it today. I'll do it some point tomorrow. We have the car loaded up, ready to go to the metal yard. Let's go see what we're paid. Back home, trailer's empty. Let's head in the garage and talk about how we did. The garage is empty. I have to sweep the floor. I have some oils over there to deal with. A couple containers of oil, one of coolant. I've got 4 bad tires outside I have to throw away. We do have an area here where there's free drop-off, so that's okay. Free drop-off for the fluids as well. So let's go over some notes on the car. Is it worth processing a car for scrap only? Like anything, it all really depends on what you paid for it. So as we know, this car that I just took to the metal yard, paid $150 for it. Final body weight on the scale was 3,600 pounds. There's 98 pounds of aluminum rims. I didn't bother trying to sell them on Marketplace. They were too beat up. And the tires, once I looked at them, they were all scalloped on the edges and there was wheel alignment issues. So nothing I could really sell. I did recover 40 liters of fuel from the car. So that's equivalent to about 10 US gallons. Right today, if I bought 40 liters of gas, it's about $65 in my area. So that stuff goes directly to the truck. I do have the radio, or the Pioneer tape deck that I did remove from the vehicle. That's still available. So all in, paid $150 for the car. Full recoverable on just the metal yard, I received $428. Now, keeping in mind where I live in Eastern Canada, I'm a distance from any smelter, so there's heavy trucking costs. So the prices locally, they're the best I'm going to get here, but if you're closer to a mill or larger cities, well, there's a better recovery rate. So if it works for me here, it'll work well for someone somewhere else. Now, for hours, I do have about 3.5 hours of labor into the process. It was a half hour to pick it up, an hour round trip to drop it off at the metal yard, and about 2 hours of processing time. So there was $278 profit, which works out to be about $79 per hour. So there's nothing wrong with that wage. It's better than sitting down on the couch watching TV. I do this in a way of avoiding a gym membership. I consider the garage my workout, and you can make a little money on the side. It helps pay for things around the garage, pays for other items I want to buy. And so it works for me. I've been doing this for a long time. There is a lot more money in flipping a car, as in repairing it and selling it, but sometimes they're not really worth fixing, and there's still money involved for the time you're working on it. As I was sweeping, a couple more thoughts came to mind. The car had 3 catalytic converters. I was able to recover the codes from them, which meant I got paid a little more for the converters versus a converter that you could not recover the code. It was a Ford product. They generally don't pay as well as something like a Hyundai or a Honda or Toyota. But those are items that have to be factored in when you buy a vehicle. The body weights of the cars matter. So this vehicle we did all right on. Some vehicles we do better, some vehicles we do worse, some vehicles you break even. So the more you scrap, the more you know what you have to pay, how far you can go to pick it up, and is it even worth buying, period. As you may see, air is a little dustier now. I finished sweeping, just wrapping things up, going to head in the house. Thanks again for watching. Please like and subscribe.